Here's the second part to what you heard yesterday. One thing that we need to look at as David desired to build a house for the Lord was everything we talked about yesterday and how God was desirous of a house that was not built by the hands of men, but something of eternal value that we see through the person and work of Jesus. I want us to understand something else about building a house for the Ark of the Covenant that David was thinking about. In our context, in our culture today, it doesn't maybe seem normal that David wanted to build a house for the Lord's presence to dwell, because we don't have to worry about that. We don't have to worry about buildings where the Lord's presence dwells, because if we believe in Jesus, the Lord's presence dwells in us. We are the building, not made by the hands of men, but made by God. And so we become the temple of God. And so for us, that's a little bit hard to understand about Him wanting to worship God by building Him a place for His presence to rest in the midst of His people, because He rests in the midst of us right now, in us, which is a wonderful, wonderful gift God has given us. But all that to say is that in the culture in which David lived, there was a mindset, an idea that the gods of the nations that surrounded David, they had specific untrue gods that they worshipped. Obviously, they were untrue and false gods that they worshiped. And what the kings of those nations would do is they would build a temple for the false gods to be worshipped, and for the place that the false gods would be recognized at. And so this is how it works. It sounds crazy, but they would build these wonderfully ornate temples for the false gods, so that it would almost be like a good work that they had done. And then in their eyes, the false gods would look at all the work they had put into making this wonderfully ornate temple. They would look favorably upon the kings. The false gods would look favorably upon the kings because of all the work they had done, and because of all the work that they have done. Then the false gods would have supposedly, don't you love air quotes, supposedly bless the king. They would show favor to the king because of his work. Now, this is why this is interesting, and this is why this is so important. Because the culture, the world around David, the culture, the world around us, still has that same mentality. That if you do this, if you work, if you earn, if you purchase your own, you have to earn your salvation. You have to earn your good favor. You have to do all these things in order to merit the favor of God or the false gods. And that's simply the exact opposite of the gospel. Jesus doesn't tell us that we have to earn our own salvation. God doesn't tell us that we have to earn our own salvation. In fact, He says just the exact opposite thing. You can't build, you can't make your own salvation. I have to provide it for you. Which is the exact same thing He said David about building a house for Him. You're not going to provide for me. That's what God's saying. David, you're not going to provide for me. I'm going to provide for you. And He's still in the business of providing for us. And so why am I telling you all this? Because I want us to understand that the thing that God has done for us through His Son Jesus is something that is unmerited, that we don't deserve it. We don't deserve for God to save us. We are in our sin, don't deserve anything, but God graciously gives it to us even when we don't do anything. And that is so freeing. And that is so encouraging and brings such life to us, because we realize that if we can't earn it, then we also can't lose it. And that's so important for us, because we live in a world that tells us that there is no commitment, that there is no dedication. We live in a world that when it gets tired of doing something, just quits. That things change, it just decides, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. It's fine. But that's not what the grace of Jesus is all about. That's not what the grace of God is all about. We don't earn it, which means we can't lose it. God graciously gives us salvation through the person, work of Jesus Christ. The perfect Jesus, the sinless Jesus, died, even though He didn't have to. For the wages of sin is death. Jesus never sinned, so Jesus didn't deserve to die. But He willingly died to take my place in your place, to take the wrath, the punishment, the separation from God that you and I deserve because of our sin. Jesus took that all on himself, even though he didn't have to, he didn't need to, he didn't deserve to. He graciously did it. And then when he died for us in our place, he defeated sin, he defeated death. And the wonderful hope, the wonderful gospel, the wonderful grace that is offered to us, if we just believe in Jesus, if we just believe in what Jesus has done for us, we will be saved. We don't have to earn it. I don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. We don't have to be sinless, because if we did, it never would happen. We are graciously given salvation even when we don't deserve it. And that takes us back to David. And what God was telling David is David was desirous of building a house for him. He's saying, David, I'm going to establish a house for you. I'm going to establish a kingdom for you because I'm the one who provides for you. Not you for me. I provide for you. I'm going to give you this. And your house and your kingdom is going to last forever. And it's the same promise that God gives to each one of us today. That I have provided for you. I have provided a house, a kingdom for you to be adopted into through Jesus. God's telling us he provides for us. And what we need to do is just recognize the provision of the Lord in the gospel and the grace of Jesus Christ. That he brings us from life to death. God is the one who provides for you and I. How freeing, how wonderful it is to know that we don't have to earn God's favor, but he gives it to us graciously. And all we have to do is to recognize and submit to what God has already done for us. And he has established us a kingdom, one that lasts forever and ever, one in which we can have great hope and peace, one in which we know that we are secure in. The Holy Spirit who dwells in us, not the houses made by men, seals us to God forever. Thanks be to God for his grace and his mercy to us, even when we don't deserve it.